Welcome to episode 4 of FPJ Stories with me, Michael Barker. My guest this month is Dan Parker, Chief Executive of Veg Power. Now, Veg Power has been doing some extraordinary work in building the market for veg, generating new excitement for vegetables amongst children, and gaining unprecedented marketing traction with its Eat Them to Defeat Them campaign. We're going to hear all about that, find out what comes next for the initiative, and hear just why it needs the whole industry to come together to support the cause. We'll also discuss Dan's rather unusual personal journey from a career spent marketing junk food to one in which he's become such a passionate advocate of healthy eating. It makes for a fascinating story, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Hello, Dan. Thanks so much for joining us on FPJ Stories, especially because you've been super busy with Veg Power at the moment, haven't you? You've got a massive amount going on with the project.
We have. We've just launched an activity book, which has got out 250,000 kids. We're getting ready for the next Eat Them, Defeat Them campaign in February, where we've got £3 million worth of TV advertising. And we've also just launched a new funding model. So we have a lot going on in the world of Veg Power.
Goodness me, that's a heck of a lot. So let's go back to the beginning. Tell us a bit about, for anybody that doesn't know, what exactly is Veg Power? What was it set up to achieve, and who's behind the organisation?
So if we go back 3 years, an organisation called the Food Foundation runs a project called Peas Please, which is about getting more vegetables into the supply side of the food system, so we can get the country eating more veg, because we have a critically low level of vegetable consumption, particularly with kids, where as much as 33% of kids are eating less than one portion a day, which is actually dangerous for their health to be eating that small amount of vegetables. And the Food Foundation, for a bit of fun, decided to run a poster competition to create a poster for vegetables. And it actually brought together initially two people from quite different worlds. It brought together Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall as a judge, who's campaigned so passionately around these issues, and Sir John Hegarty, the advertising legend, as judges. And a conversation started that says, actually, you know what, veg really needs a brand manager. And so the Food Foundation took hold of that a bit. And I knew the Food Foundation, and I was at a point in my life where I was looking for a new thing to do. So I took on the project, saying, well, let's get this thing going. And so the purpose of Veg Power becomes, it is a not-for-profit organisation. It's not a traditional food marketing board. It's a not-for-profit organisation. At its heart, it has a charitable purpose about improving the health and well-being of the nation, particularly kids. And we set up with this unique model to then go and use marketing and advertising in its many, many different forms to bring forward a generation of children who have a different, more positive attitude to vegetables, who would in turn influence their parents today and influence their own children in the future.
Indeed. It's a fantastic objective. And we're going to talk in more detail a little bit later about the specifics of what you're getting up to and stuff. But I'm quite interested in hearing about how you became involved in the project, because in fact, you're actually a marketing man by trade, but just looking down your CV at some of the brands that you've worked with in the past, we've got McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Pizza Hut, Diageo, Jack Daniels, some brilliant food and drink brands, but not necessarily what you would call healthy eating. So what inspired you to move over to campaign for more vegetable consumption?
Yeah, I think it's probably middle-aged is probably the honest answer. I mean, I worked in food marketing for most of my life with many of the biggest brands and lots of the grocers. And I owned my own agency with about 50 people doing lots of work for those companies. And then about 5-6 years ago, I got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which runs heavily within the genes in my family. And what it actually did is it forced me to step outside of my bubble. And we all live in bubbles, right? I was in the Soho advertising bubble, where we never meet old people or children or sick people or old people. None of those people exist in the world of Soho advertising. And it forced me to step outside of that. And the natural curiosity I had wanted to learn everything about the condition I have and what I could do about it and really, really study it and read every book. And I learned very quickly that there was this massive great crisis in obesity, which I think we're all a lot more aware of now than we maybe were 5 years ago. And actually, there are 15 million people in the UK who have some form of non-communicable diseases, most of which are based in diet, which is cancer and diabetes and heart disease and others. So it sort of occurred to me that actually, you know what, I was part of the problem, and ironically, part of the problem that had killed my dad, had killed my aunt, that my brother was inflicted with as well, and I was actually part of the problem there. So I decided I would close down my agency, and I sat there and said, well, I'm good at this, and I would like to use the skills I have to try and make the world a better and healthier place. So I started volunteering for Jamie Oliver on a project called Sugar Smart, which is obviously about getting kids to maybe eat a little bit less sugar. And then when this project came along, and Anna Taylor from the Food Foundation came and said, look, we think we should try and do more to get the world to eat more vegetables. I said, well, this is perfect. This allows me to do the thing that I'm good at and I love, which is about communicating about food, but actually to do it in the area of the most important food that people should eat. And so it really hit sort of a massive passion point and a massive desire to do something positive in society, which I absolutely love doing.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's a massive change. It sounds like it was a real light bulb moment for you, and a time to make a total change. But of course, you're not a complete new entrant to the fresh produce sector either, because I gather you did a bit of fruit picking yourself as a kid. Is that right? And in fact, there's more than that too. Your connection to horticulture, isn't there?
There is. I mean, so I grew up in the Sussex countryside, and I spent my life, my holidays and my weekends, really probably from about the age of 13, picking. So down at Barkham Nurseries, picking lots of tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers. In the summer, we'll be out in the fields picking black currants, which is a proper day's work. It has to be said, that's hard graft. And a bit of hay bedding and things of that nature. And then when I got to about the age of 18, I went off to university. I actually spent my university career working for a florist. You find me most Saturdays down New Covent Garden Market, a bit of wheeler dealering with the boys down there, and buying up the flowers and the plants we needed to run the business. And that's kind of how I spent my youth. And when I left university is when I started getting into marketing and advertising and working for those bigger brands.
Wow. I mean, it's quite interesting to get your perspective, because one thing that is leveled occasionally at the horticulture industry is that we don't get a lot of people coming in from outside. As a marketer who's dealt with those massive brands, what was your first impression of the way that the fresh produce industry markets itself? And, are you surprised to see that there aren't more brands and things in the fresh produce sector?
Yeah, I mean, so I think when it comes to vegetables, I think there's quite a notable difference of vegetables compared to maybe some other places in the fresh produce thing. Is the first shock is the fact that it doesn't market itself. I mean, there are small product specific campaigns, but the budgets they have and the reach they have is pretty hard to really get into the awareness of people in general. But actually you look at it and go, well, there isn't really much in the way of brands, there isn't really much in the way of marketing. And also then when you dig a little deeper, you realize that actually there isn't a culture of marketing within the organizations that sit at the heart of it, which are the people who make the vegetables. There isn't really many people who've got much sense of marketing within those organizations. In fact, the opposite is, I would actually say that many of them, certainly 2 or 3 years ago, would be very, very cynical about the benefits of marketing. We also then have some much more structural challenges that there are very little in the way of brands. It is unlikely that brands will become established. It's very hard to establish a brand because of the relationships that exist across the supply chain. There is incredibly tight margins that mean that it's very hard to invest in marketing. I mean, you consider any major consumer good like breakfast cereals or chocolate bars or burgers, those organizations spend about 13% of the turnover of their sector on marketing their product. Okay. So given the value of the veg industry, if it wants to compete with other food products, we're talking about spending hundreds of millions of pounds, which just simply isn't happening and isn't going to happen. Okay. What also surprised me was the really fundamental lack of understanding of the consumer. I think the space has become, it's a commodity product. It's a commodity product for the consumer. It's the third choice about what goes in the plate. It's pretty much price driven. There isn't generally a great deal of care in the selection of the veg that people pick, and then they wonder why their carrots don't taste it very much because they're buying them at the wrong time of year. And so it's the commodity item on people's plates, and therefore that ripples across the whole supply chain. That what really matters most to the supermarkets is the price, because that's what matters to their customers. Therefore, the pressure on the grower is always on the price and on the margin rather than on the quality and on the way the food is produced. And so it's got this vicious circle of a kind of commodity business that is just a race to the bottom in terms of quality if you're not careful. And that is part of the thing that we need to try and reverse.
Yeah, indeed. And one of the key things about that, I mean, you talk about that disparity between what the big brands can spend and what the horticulture or the vegetable sector specifically can spend. And that's where I guess the Eat Them to Defeat Them campaign has really stood out, in that certainly for the first time I can remember, we've got a vegetable industry campaign going head to head, prime time, TV, celebrity support. Well, I mean, to be honest, the celebrity support is something completely different. I'd like to talk to you about that separately. But how did it come about that you managed to get all these different big hitters to support the campaign? ITV, the Adam and Eve, and so on. Tell us a bit about that process. And
I think there's a three-part formula to that.
Yeah.
What is very, very interesting for vegetables right now is eat more veg is part of the solution to many of the biggest issues of the day. So childhood obesity, COVID, climate change, Brexit, these are some of the very, very big issues of the day. And veg is not only part of the solution, but in some ways it's actually kind of the safest part of the solution, because nobody disagrees with eating more veg. It's not full of tripwires for chief executives to get behind it as an issue, unlike other things to do with junk food marketing, for example, or carbon emissions, or airline travel, or the other things that people might get behind. So what we've actually got is a golden issue that is so of this moment in time that it presents an opportunity to the sector. Now, coupled with that, we have the advantage that there was an immense amount of goodwill for what we do, and an immense amount of support from people like John Hegarty, Hugh Fernie-Whitstall, Jamie Oliver, Baroness Boycott, very well-connected and influential people. And then again, I think the thing that also separates us from most other health projects, and possibly even other fresh produce marketing projects, is that Joe Ralling and I, who worked on this, we're very entrepreneurial. Well, we're absolute blaggers. We will phone up anybody and shamelessly ask them for anything. And we will, I make jokes with people that the most basic requirement of somebody whose job it is to get kids to eat more veg is persistence. So please excuse me if I call you for the 25th time, but this is my job, right? And so we just get out there and we do it. Now, what happened to us is after we kicked off with the crowdfund, which created a lot of publicity and brought some organizations to the project who may not otherwise have come. And where we had a moment of, I think, of great fortune is off the back of that crowdfund, we got a phone call from ITV who said, we really like what you're doing. How can we get involved? And we went and met with them. And Joe shamelessly said, yes, you can give us millions of pounds worth of free TV advertising. And ITV went, yeah, okay. And then they also have come in. They've been amazing partners who've given so much more than free space. They've really helped shape this idea. And then a big TV campaign acts like a kind of a flag that everybody else rallies to. So it pulls in the celebrities and the poster campaign and the digital campaign and the schools and everything else. So ITV gave us this massive great leg up that we have used as a magnet to put in everything else.
Yeah. And I mean, you've had some priceless celebrity support. I mean, tell us some of the names who've associated themselves with this campaign, even if just for a few seconds on TV.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Anton Deck. Anton Deck, prime time, Saturday night, eating your product and saying your catchphrase is something that will cost you an absolute fortune. Will.i.am has supported us, Team GB, Jonathan Ross, Pixie Lott, and obviously Jamie Oliver and Hugh and Prue and lots of chefs. I mean, there's just this vast list of celebrities. Even Peter Rabbit got behind us last year.
Well, you've arrived when Peter Rabbit supports you, I'd say.
You have, I think, right? And to a great extent, this is about ITV leveraging its relationships, that it has with a lot of its own talent, but also, again, it's become an issue that is easy for people to support and something people care about.
Yeah, most definitely. And then just hit us with a few of the figures, because there's some extraordinary figures in terms of the numbers of people that have seen the campaign, and probably way more significantly, the number of kids that not just from the advertising I'm talking here, but also the schools initiative, but the number of kids that say they've eaten more veg. Give us a few numbers.
Yeah, so our TV campaign last year, which ran across ITV, Channel 4 and various Sky channels, Channel 5, that reached 46 million people. And what it meant is that 87% of households that had kids of a primary school age saw the advert 10 times. On top of that, we secured 2.4 million cinema admissions, adverts before the movies, which were donated by the cinema chains. And we received some good reach on Google. They gave us a nice ad campaign that went out to about 3 million people. And then the poster companies give us poster sites. And over the last couple of years, we have figured 77 million times a person has walked past one of our posters, thanks to the poster companies. So the reach is terrific. Then the schools program is in 1,500 primary schools, which is 425,000 kids, which is something we hope to grow this year. We would like ultimately to be in every primary school, but we've got some journey to go to get to that. So we're getting fabulous scale with this project.
Incredible stuff. And now for probably the most important question of all: how many portions of veg are you getting nowadays? And have you at least added an extra portion since you've been in this role?
Yeah, I am a model of veg consumption. Where are we today? As you and I speak, I haven't had my lunch yet, and I've only had 2 portions of veg so far today. Normally I probably had about 3, but I was a bit of a rush at breakfast time. So I like my veg.
It's around midday, so people know what time we're recording. So
around midday,
2 in the morning.
There'll be another portion or 2 I expect for lunch. I mean, for me, partly because I have type 2 diabetes, so I have to be very careful about what I eat. And it means actually I can't eat an awful lot of things like rice and potatoes and pasta. So actually I make up that missing space on my plate by eating an awful lot more fresh produce and pulses and things of that nature. So, you know, I'm probably a 9 to 10 portion of veg, and I can't eat an awful lot of fruit because it's got too much sugar. So I'm probably 9 to 10 portions of veg a day.
Well, that probably puts you in the top few percent in the country, I would say. But it's important. It is important that you practice what you preach, I think, and that's, you know,
I'm
that's
over
really
delivering on that, if not anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know how you go any higher on that, but what you will what you do have some really big ambitions are for the next phase of the campaign, and that's all about building a sustainable model, isn't it? So tell us a bit about the membership approach that you're taking for the next level. How's that going to work?
Okay, so we've spent the last 2 years proving that we have a reason to exist, right? And in truth, 2 years ago we were met with quite a lot of cynicism as to whether we'd be around for very long and whether the thing wasn't going to deliver any value, right? And I think we've proved that we're committed to this and that we can deliver some meaningful results. Where that takes us now is we sat there and said, well, okay, how are we going to fund this project? So we can go and get millions of pounds worth of free media. We can go and get the celebrity support that is hard to put a value on. We can go, we've raised 1.7 million pounds for campaign funding, but every penny of that goes into more kids, more schools, more posters, more whatever it is we're doing. How are we going to fund the team we need to be able to deliver this in a sustainable way and at a scale that is necessary to have an impact? And we concluded that we were very keen to be a whole sector alliance. We want everybody involved who stands to benefit. So whether you're a grower or an importer or a wholesaler, the retailers, the box schemes, the food services companies, and going back down the supply chains, if you sell seeds or you sell glass houses, or frankly, you sell banking or insurance services into the horticultural sector, the bottom line is the thing that's going to drive your business more than anything else is people eating more veg. Okay? So we're asking all those organizations to put in a little, which we've asked for £12,000 a year. And then we've put a 50% discount on that to £6,000 for UK-based growers, because we are very, very keen that UK-based growers sits at the very, very heart of what we do. And so we're very keen to get them on board.
Yeah, and it is important. I mean, you stress that whole sector alliance situation, and that's not something we've really had in this sector before, I don't think. But it is important, isn't it, that the growers and everybody that's set to benefit actually tries to participate and helps it reach its objectives. It can't all be necessarily on the supermarkets, even though the supermarkets, of course, are the ones with the most money. Everybody needs to chip in.
Yeah, the interesting thing for the supermarkets is, I mean, the supermarkets also give us extra campaign funding. So that 1.7 million, the vast majority of that has come from supermarkets. So they do pay more in effect, right, by choice. This, to some extent, this partition is about giving us a mandate. So if I go and speak to a supermarket and say, can we do this? The first question they always ask is, are the growers supporting it? Because they want to know that the growers are committed. They've got some skin in the game. They are very keen that growers become much more aware of their customers and closer to their customers, understanding what the trends and demands are. And so when you go to a supermarket and say, well, actually, all these growers are supporting it, it's really, they're very, very keen to be involved. Likewise, if we go to governments, we've had funding in the last 12 months. We had a little bit of funding from DEFRA, a little bit of funding from PHE. We want to be able to go to those funding sources and say, look, we speak with the voice of the whole sector here. Everybody is behind this. Even companies that maybe have had a pretty rough 2020 are putting a little bit of money into the pot here. Please, DEFRA, can you give us £250,000 to do a seasonal veg campaign? To anybody from DEFRA who might happen to be watching this. We've got an argument because of the commitment that everybody else is making. Yeah. The other thing that makes this an alliance is, we have all these media companies giving us free media space. We have free agencies creating ads and things for free. We have data companies giving their data for free. We have community groups and schools and all sorts of people at community level who are engaging, getting involved in, and putting their time and energy in for free. So excluding the schools, there's got to be at least 1,000 organizations who give to this project in some form. But there will be an expectation of all those people that the companies that stand to benefit from this commercially are prepared to put some money in to make it happen.
Yeah, that sounds right. And that's a good retort, I suppose, to people that say, well, the campaign's happening anyway, it's already building sales, so why do I need to contribute? And I suppose, well, the simple answer is it's not going to be able to continue at the same level. You can't ride the free wave forever, can you? You need a bit of core costs covering.
Yeah, I mean, where we're at the moment, which often surprises people, is theoretically I work 2.5 days a week on Veg Power. And obviously that equates to somewhere in the region of about 50 hours. Joe works 1 day a week, Claire works 2 days a week, Stephanie works 2 days a week. That's it. That's the entire Veg Power team. It's not really sustainable because we all do more hours for free than we get paid for. And also we've all, I have blagged in every single favor that I have ever earned over the 25-year career from everybody I can find in order to get stuff for free for this project. Those things only can run for so long. There's a point in time in which we need a more solid amount of people involved. We need to give people the proper tools to do their job rather than just winging it the whole time. We need to pay for some things occasionally. And to do that and to really grow and to be around for 10 years or 15 years or for however long this takes, we need to have a more sensible base in terms of funding that organization.
Yeah, fair enough. An extra selling point, I think, of this that perhaps we haven't talked about too much yet is the seasonal vegetables thing. It's often been not a criticism, but just a fact of life that there hasn't been a really good year-round campaign promoting British vegetables throughout the course of the 12 months, or at least I can't think of one. They tend to be specific, of course, to certain veg at certain types of year. But that's part of the next phase, isn't it? To have that year-round promotional presence.
Yeah, we've certainly got that second string to our bow now. So, I mean, Eat Them, Defeat Them has to run in February because that's when it fits with and we can get all the support we need to make it possible. It's a lousy time of year for seasonal vegetables, but there's nothing we can do about it. So what we're trying to do is establish a foundation for those. If we can get kids eating peas and sweet corn and carrots and peppers and things of that nature, then they hopefully will increase their repertoire, but also they're going to grow up to be people who later in life will be eating asparagus and mushrooms and kale. Right? We now have a second string to our bow that kicked off this summer with a small grant from DEFRA, which is talking about seasonal veg. And we've been featuring a different veg each week, often putting a spotlight on veg that maybe doesn't normally get into the spotlight, like courgettes and watercress and fennel and veg that perhaps is not quite so famous, shall we say. And so far on social media, what we've managed to do is recruit in on social media Jamie and Prue, who did a whole thing about courgettes, and Hugh, and some of the kind of younger, trendy Instagrammers. Bettina's Kitchen got massively behind tomatoes, and getting those active on social media. And so far, I say we reached 11.4 million people on social media with that campaign. If we take Watercress Week, for example, we work with the AHDB, who are running a project called Watercress Challenge. And what we did is we went and found 70 good quality social media influencers, people with decent followings, and we sent them all a box of watercress and challenged them to do something interesting with it. And that generated a lot of social media traffic in support of that industry initiative. Now that's just the start. My view is this. I was recently studying free range eggs, and back in 2004, free range eggs were about a third of the UK market. By 2019, it was 2/3. And I think we can take a similar journey with seasonal veg. I think the opportunity is there, given climate change, given Brexit, given COVID. There is an opportunity to say to people, let's make you more aware of what's in season and understanding the benefits of what's in season, including the financial benefits. If you're smart and you buy things at the right time, you will be getting a better deal for your money as a low-income consumer. Plus, you'll be getting more nutritious veg and tastier veg. Right? So I think we can empower people to do that at every level, from kids through to adults. And I hope that this becomes a big campaign for us that is always on. It will probably be louder at certain times of year than others. I hope that one day we start seeing more seasonal veg sections inside supermarkets, more seasonal veg logos on packages, and perhaps as the sort of post-Brexit world evolves, we might get to a situation where we talk about seasonal British veg and encourage people very much to buy locally. That would be a great win, and we'd be excited to do that.
Yeah, most definitely. There's always critics of anything in life. There's 2 points that I guess come up now and again. One is the people that say when they see the Eat Them to Defeat Them campaign that you shouldn't be painting vegetables as hated things that children can't stand. So that's the first point. And secondly, what do you say to the fruit industry? Certain figures within which have said, why aren't you promoting all of fresh produce? Why are you focusing just on vegetables? What would you say to those 2 points?
Okay, so let's do the second one first, because that's easiest. We've looked at this very, very carefully several times through the course of our history so far, of whether we should be doing fruit or just veg. And our feeling is that if you're marketing fruit and veg, people end up leaning in towards apples and bananas and berries, because it's considerably easier to market those things and to get kids to eat those things. And veg just always becomes this kind of poor cousin of everything that happens, particularly if you talk about, the kind of slightly tougher, less glamorous, less pretty veg. It's you might get some marketing for a tomato, but it's pretty hard to get behind a Swede, right? We don't want to fall into that trap again. We want to make veg the most celebrated and product in fresh produce, and also, frankly, it is the area of absolute greatest need. Veg consumption. Veg gives you things you can't get from fruit. It's the essential part of your diet, and the consumption figures are terrible. But just an add-on to that, what I hope we can see ourselves over the next few years being like best mates of fruit is the way I would see it. And I think there are things where we can collaborate with the organizations that represent fruit towards some common goals. And I hope that's something we will see happen next year and beyond. In answer to the creative question, when we started this process, we did two things. We asked lots of people with expertise in different areas, whether they might be school caterers or child psychologists or chefs or lots of different people. One simple question, which is, why don't kids eat veg? We also went and asked a whole bunch of kids as well. And we came back with a thing that said, what's happening here is that lots of kids think that vegetables are boring, even disgusting. It even goes so far as that vegetables are a bit of a currency in an ongoing battle with their parents that says, if you eat your veg, you're kind of losing. And lots of kids don't like vegetables before they go into their mouth. And that means there's a cultural thing rather than a taste thing. We also noticed the amount of negative representation of vegetables in the media, particularly sort of those kind of children's cartoons where it goes, yeah, broccoli. Right? And that's kind of where the kids are at. Then next to that, all the campaigns that people have done where they've gone, veg are delicious, they're really good for you, and look at this kind of happy farmer with a basket of veggies. All those campaigns, they've never worked, any of them. Right? So we said, well, actually, there's some basic common rules when it comes to marketing something, is if you're taking people on a journey from A to B, A to Z, you have to start at A. Even if you don't like what A is, you have to start at A. If you start at Z, it's too far away from people who are A for them to be able to relate to what you're saying. The second thing that I've learned in my work that I've done for many big consumer brands is that when you're talking to kids, you have to have fun. So most kids, primary school age kids, their life is how much fun am I having now? Not how do I avoid cancer when I'm 60, right? So unless you're talking about how much fun am I having now, you won't get their attention. So veg are disgusting, that's their view. How much fun can we have with it? And then the third part is children of that age have a remarkable ability to immerse themselves in the story. So before about 5, they think that Teletubbies really exist. Right? But by about 5, they understand that fairies and unicorns and dragons and things like this are not real. They're there for play. And by the time they get to their teens, the ability to immerse ourselves into fantasy gets somewhat diminished as we start to think more about that cute-looking person on the other side of the room. Okay? So kids have this amazing ability to immerse themselves in fantasy and play with it. So with Eat Them, Defeat Them, they totally get that it's a ruse. They know it's a joke, it's funny, and they love it when parents engage with a joke and fold themselves into the fantasy as much as the kids do. But they play along with the fantasy because it's a game, it's funny, and therefore they eat veg, and hopefully at that point in time they realize that they're not quite as disgusting as they first thought, and actually all the other kids are eating veg, and actually the normal thing to do is to eat veg. So it's an interesting part of psychology. It was a massive, massive risk 2 years ago. But since then, it's won pretty much every award that's out there. It's won over the vast majority of people who 2 years ago thought that we were doing a terrible thing. And more importantly, we've driven £63 million worth of additional sales, 517 million additional portions of veg consumed. So it works.
Yeah, the proof is in the pudding, vegetable flavored pudding.
Definitely. What a horrible thought.
Yeah. Sure, it's delicious. It's the sort of thing they serve up at those 5-star London hotels, and you look at it on the menu and think, just bring me some ice cream.
Yeah, I mean, I love vegetables, but if I'm having a dessert, I don't really expect them to feature massively.
Although carrot cake, I can get on board with that.
Yeah.
There's some quite sobering statistics, really, about the number of the proportion of kids who don't even get a single portion of veg a day. In those cases, I guess it's, you're talking a societal problem, a familial problem, deep-rooted issues. Can this campaign even make headway with those kids and those families that aren't even managing to get any vegetables at all?
Yes, I mean, it would be very wrong to think there's a one-size-fits-all problem here. There are people from families that are relatively well off and have a relatively comfortable life, where the kids eat some veg, but they're just not eating enough. And we want to support them, of course we do. We also then have people with really very serious challenges. As the Marcus Rashford campaign has showed, there are sadly millions of children in this country who live in huge food insecurity, terrible poverty, and actually their parents about, well, can I just get some food on the table? And if you give me a voucher for veggies, I'll buy veggies. If you just give me money, actually I'll go and buy whatever has got the most amount of calories in it at a low cost, and the stores in my area don't sell much fresh produce anyway, and I can't afford the bus fare, and a whole gamut of projects, of problems. Veg Power, to some extent, at that hardest and most acute end, it's very hard for Veg Power to fix that, because fundamentally the core problem those people face is serious levels of poverty. Somebody in a bedsit who's only got a kettle to cook with is a very hard family for Veg Power to help. But hopefully things like the Market Rasher campaign, which is very much coming out of our sister organisation, the Food Foundation, helps with that. But what we're really interested in is that kind of bracket who actually, they have to be savvy with their money, but they can afford to put vegetables on the table, but they don't. But actually, it's a struggle for them to see those vegetables go into the bin, so they're very cautious. They might be people who, they are shopping on a tighter budget, and they've got kids, and that audience will see there will be lots of people eating low volumes of vegetables. Unfortunately, sadly, there is a big correlation between low vegetable consumption and means. There's a big correlation between low vegetable consumption and childhood obesity. There's a big correlation between low vegetable consumption and low levels of physical activity. And there is a group within our society of kids who unfortunately are struggling with all those things at the same time. And that is a group that is probably of greatest importance to us, that we can, because it is many millions of people. As I say, a third of kids are eating less than one portion a day. It's that third that we care about the most. We want to talk to everybody. We want to solve it for everybody. But if we can get a kid who eats maybe 3 portions of veg a week to be eating 1 portion of veg a day, the benefits to society and the benefits to the horticultural industry are absolutely huge.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful objective, and I can see how passionate you are, and you have to be, but you are. It's not just a job for you. And in fact, looking at your CV, I see that recently that you were trustee of an anti-bullying charity. Is this something that's come to you later in life, a desire to, I don't know, give something back to society, improve society, and make a positive difference?
It's actually, I blame a friend of mine for ruining my ability to earn a decent living, actually. He said to me an interesting line. He said, "The greatest minds of our generation are dedicated to get someone to click." And I sat there and thought, oh God, you know what? I was blessed with a pretty good brain. I was given a great education, a great family background, thanks to my parents. And I have worked pretty hard. I've probably been a bit of a workaholic for most of my working life. And I sat there and thought, wow, all of that. And what did I do? I got people to buy more burgers, buy more Cokes, buy more car insurance or holidays or banking services, whatever it may be. And I went, that's an immense amount of, is that my epitaph? Is that an immense amount of my given life force, my time here and the energy that I will have? Am I kind of building the story of human existence up to a higher place, or am I just sitting there making sure I can afford another holiday? And I had a bit of an epiphany about all of that. And I was middle-aged, and you get a midlife crisis. I got a sports car at some point as well, and got a sports car which is gone now, and a conscience which I think has probably stayed. And so I was sitting there going, well, I need to do something with my life that has some purpose. And I joined the bullying charity because it was kind of there at the moment when I wanted to do that, but it wasn't really a natural fit for me or for my natural skills. And so when I started then getting involved in Sugar Smart and Veg Power, I find myself in this perfect place where I'm doing something that I'm actually good at and I really enjoy, that actually is hopefully making the world a better place. And that is just an incredibly fulfilling place. And I would suggest to anybody to try and find that, because it just makes you feel great.
Yeah, fabulous. So when you aren't working 50 hours in 2.5 days, what do you do to unwind? It must be stressful trying to pull all this stuff together. What do you do to switch off from it?
I'll try and remember the answer to that. Let me have a look at my photo album. I mean, I have an 11-year-old boy. Who is obviously, like everybody, he's the light in my life. And so the more time I can spend doing stuff with him, and the more time I can spend dragging him away from the telly and getting him out into the countryside. I mean, my wife and I are, we're people, if we get a dream holiday, we'll be heading off to a mountain somewhere to go and climb it, or out to the countryside, or out to some national park or a forest is the thing we'd like to do the most. So dragging my son out into the national parks in the Sussex countryside would be well up there. We've also just taken on a Labrador puppy, so getting him out there as well. But
amazing. Really,
there is nothing finer than a lovely walk outside with your family on a summer's day. God, I do sound like a 51-year-old man now.
Well, you don't look like a 51-year-old man, so that's the good thing about it. Dan, that's pretty much all we got time for. It's a fabulous campaign. I certainly urge everybody to get involved and support its objectives. Where can they go to find out more information?
Thank you. vegpower.org.uk would be the home of the information. And then follow us on Twitter, where we're always talking about all the things we're doing and what our partners are doing and other members of the Alliance. And that is Veg Power UK on all social media platforms.
Great stuff. Well, it's been brilliant to hear all about it, and we can't wait to watch and see how it progresses over the years, and wish you all the best with it. Dan, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael.